When I quit my job at FedEx after 15 years, I really didn't have enough income to do it, to be honest. But back then, times were pretty tough. This video is about how the residential cleaning business actually helped me to get started. I will tell you this, I will always shoot straight with you, and I will help you if I can. I don't know if papers even exist anymore. This video goes out to the channel today. I was thinking yesterday about if I was going to start a cleaning business all over again, what would I do? And also I was thinking about how did I actually start a cleaning business? Because when I quit my job at FedEx after 15 years, I really didn't have enough income to do it, to be honest. And I was a little bit, concerned that I was gonna have a hard time making ends meet, to be honest. I mean, I was divorced. I'd been divorced probably for 10 years, and I'd been remarried to my current wife, and we've been married over 20 years now. We live in the Philippines. But back then, times were pretty tough. I was paying child support on 3 kids. I was paying college on 3 kids. And I don't begrudge that at all, but I'm trying to illustrate what it was like and what fear did for me, actually, and how I bridged the gap between starting. We already kind of had a little bit of a residential cleaning business. My wife did. And if you look at my first video, we started out with like $90, and we put ads in a paper. I don't know if papers even exist anymore. That was, I don't even know, 2000 sometime. We were married in 99, so probably 2005, 2006, she started cleaning houses. We put a $90 ad in the paper, and we started getting phone calls. We had a landline back then. Can you imagine that? People, I can remember years later thinking, do I get rid of my landline? No, I need to keep it, And actually for a while, because we run ads in a newspaper from time to time and, other places, we did keep the landline so that we could advertise on that a little bit if we were going to do a little bit of advertising. But this video is about how the residential cleaning business actually helped me to get started. Because when we first got started, I had a couple of commercial accounts. And I've kind of done this in another video, but I had a couple. One was $600 a month, and one was like maybe $600 a month, like $1,200 a month. And that's not bad on top, and we were doing pretty good. I mean, I was working at FedEx, making $800-900 a week, clear, about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And my wife was making, she had quit. Her last job she ever worked at was in a shoe factory, and it closed down. So that's why she started in the residential cleaning business, and she just picked up, we just got a few calls from those ads, and here she is. She's pretty young still. She's, early 30s, and my wife's actually from the Philippines. So here she is. She's in America. She came over in 2001, but still there's this whole culture thing. Filipinas, and that's what they call them, Filipina if you're a female, Filipino if you're a guy. So, they have this fear, basically, or they're shy to talk and be bold to Caucasians, to foreigners. And growing up in the Philippines, if you know what it's like here, you could probably understand. Now, she didn't. I told her, I said, you don't have any reason. You're just as good as anybody else. And, I could have went out probably and tried to do the estimates for her, but I really didn't have time. So she went out and she would call, after they would call, she'd make the appointment, and then she'd go out there. And I remember she went to some little old lady's apartment somewhere in the town we were in, and she got the job, and it was probably $35, $45 a week or every 2 weeks. But she's picking up what she could. She lost her job at the shoe factory. She was making about $400 a week, which in our situation, that was a big help. And she had free health insurance. So, she was scratching, trying to get anything she could. But as, a shy Filipina woman, she had to go out and do the estimates. So, she had built up a book of business over a period of time. And it was like 5 years later, she'd been doing houses for like 5 years, and she got to where she was working about 20, 25 hours a week, and she was making pretty good money. So, that helped whenever I wanted to whenever I quit my job, I could say gloriously, when I made the transition was pretty dang quick. And I'll never will forget this. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the last video, but I never will forget how much my wife supported me. And she knew I was stressed. I was stressed beyond belief at FedEx. And I'm not trying to put them down. I actually own stock in FedEx, and they helped me, to set back some money for retirement on the years that I was there. So I'm very grateful for that company. And I learned a lot being as a driver and being in management there. But I never will forget the morning. I was just stressed, and I won't go into the issue of the problem, but my wife's just standing next to me. I could take you back to the spot downstairs in our old house. I can remember it just like it was yesterday. And she said, "Honey, don't you feel like it's time that you just quit?" I was like, oh my God, I never even considered that. And it's not like, oh yeah, it's such a great idea. No, but as a man, as the way I grew up, as a man, you're responsible to take care of the household. And I was, and also my kids and their college and all this other stuff going on. And it just seemed like such a big risk just to quit. But we did have the basis, a little bit of money coming in on the house cleaning side. And we may have been making $25,000 to $30,000, or she was, and her mom had also immigrated here to the United States, and she was helping out too. So it was growing a little bit, but it was by no means a good full-time income for a household. So anyway, when she said that, "Honey, don't you think it's time for you to quit?" It was almost like all the pressure from that job just rained off of my shoulders, just fell on the ground and drifted away. And I thought, yeah. And I was a little scared when I entertained that idea, but still, it was a lot better than facing going back in there to work again, which I did go back in that morning, but I went back in with a different message that day. So when I went in, and I told this story in another video, I'll make it real quick. I put my resignation on the desk, and HR called, see if they could keep me there and all this kind of stuff. And I said, no, I've made up my mind, I'm done. And I was completely done. So I had to hit the ground running, and we did. First thing, I came back home. I made phone calls, told my mom and dad, told my brothers, all my friends and stuff like that. I said on the phone, I remember it was like January 10th, 2010. It was a overcast day. It was cold in Missouri, and I'm just sitting there on the phone. And as I'm talking to these people, I am feeling better and better. And you got to understand, that's not my real personality to ever quit anything. And I learned later in life that I should have probably been better at quitting things than I was. I was always taught to stick in there and stay. Things are going to get better. And, don't be a quitter. It's going to ruin your job record. And all those things are kind of true. But there are some things that you shouldn't put up with too. And some things that you should let go of in your life and will actually free you up to be the person that you want to become in life. So what we had to do, I started going with her some. After the first week, I started going with her on her houses, and I would help clean. We'd put her mom in the kitchen. She was older. She couldn't do a lot, but she helped as good as she could. And my wife would start somewhere, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to go back in the bedrooms. I'm going to start back there. and we would work hard, and we'd work as fast as we could, still doing a good job. We had to do that. We had to recheck everything and satisfy that customer every time. But here I am, a 42-year-old guy. I've managed a FedEx terminal, and here I am in there. I'll put it this way: if you have a big ego, house cleaning is a hard one. It's a hard one to swallow if you're a guy. I don't know how that is for women. Maybe the same way, maybe not. I don't know. You tell me down in the comments. But as a guy, I was a manager. I had 15 to 16 guys through the day, and all night long I had drivers out on the road. So that, I was responsible for. Sometimes I'd have to get up in the middle of the night, go to an accident or something like that, 3:30 in the morning, maybe drive an hour and a half. I mean, it was a big responsibility. So going from that to, I have one moment, and I almost regret sharing it, but we had a really nice house, and it was $100 a week. It was on Friday, and every Friday we'd go do that house. And she was kind of a picky lady. She was one of these. She thought, I'm not going to get into my car. When you get residential customers, you're going to get an opinion about each one of them. And I'll just tell you, I was cleaning the master bedroom one day, and they had 3 kids and 2 dogs in the house, and they didn't do any cleaning. They didn't do nothing. I call it, when I go into a house sometimes and it's just a complete wreck, I call it bulldoze cleaning. Basically, you clear the paths, you do what you can. You can't stay there for 7-8 hours. I mean, they're not paying you for that. They're paying $100. They got their $100 worth. But I remember being in the master bedroom, and we'd make the bed, we'd, dust everything down. I would check the windows, make sure there wasn't any dog nose prints on there, clean the whole bathroom. They had 2 big sinks, a huge shower tub, the whole 9 yards, tile everywhere, big sunken bathtub. It was a really nice house. And I'm just going back through checking myself, getting ready to vacuum, because that's always the last thing I would do, because you leave your nice tracks in the bedroom, and you don't want to have to walk back in there because you mess up your tracks. You want it nice, neat, and you knew that the cleaners had been there when the owner walked in the house. So, but I'm looking around, and I said, I better get down and look under the bed. And I saw something in there, and I reached and pulled it out, and it was a pair of woman's panties. And it's no big deal about that. I just took them and threw them in the laundry. But, when you're a guy and you're a middle-aged guy, you kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit, But what I tried to think of was, look, we're making a $100 bill. We're going to leave this house, go to 2 or 3 more houses, and we're going to do well today, and we'll probably be home before 3 o'clock. And we didn't leave the house probably till about 8:30. So we're making good money. This is a legit business, and we're going to make it. We have to make money. We have to make money fast, because I had like 3 weeks of vacation I could take, and I don't remember what else. There was something else in there. I had about 5 weeks really to hit the ground running and get my act together financially, so we could pay our bills, So, and again, when I first quit, I called everybody. I slashed everything to the bone. I haven't had cable TV. I haven't had satellite since 2010. This is 2025 now. These days, you just have streaming services, and I've got Netflix, and I've got Prime. Because of Amazon, I have Prime. But I slashed everything to the bone, and we started in that residential cleaning business, and I think we did a little bit of like print advertising, and also there was this thing back then, you probably heard of Angie's List. It was around back then too, but the one I used was called Home Advisor. And you sign up with them, you have to get registered with the state, to show them your registration, you have to have proof of insurance, all these things, and then you can get on their lead program, and every time somebody calls you and you answer that phone, you get a chance to go make an estimate on that house. And as long as you don't blow it, you can get another client that way. We picked up a lot of clients like that. And it wasn't perfect. It was somewhat expensive, maybe $15 dollars a lead, sometimes 20, 25, and I used them over the years in different situations. I used to use them for window cleaning, and I had a window cleaning business later on, and they were pretty good. So you can do those kind of things, and you can buy leads, and then if they're not working out, or maybe you can't afford it, you can shut them off. And then when you got a little money, you can turn them back on. So that was one way that we built up our residential business. Plus referrals are the greatest way to do it. And so, but the residential business gave us the cash flow that we needed to get up to where we could pay our bills. And, I worked in that business for a little while, probably a few months. But then when I wasn't working in that, I went out and hit the pavement and started picking up some residential clients. And we were also using that same Home Advisor, which it's not around anymore. It's all rolled. Angie's List bought them out. But there are places like that. You just go lead services for house cleaning in Google, and there'll be a bunch of them. I'm not going to endorse any of them because I don't know how they are these days. But, I had to learn. I didn't know how Home Advisor was either. I just had to try it and then see if it worked. And I tell you what, I got some commercial clients out of it. I got a lot of residential clients out of it. But at the time, I started backing out of the residential work and started selling the commercial accounts. And then I quit in January of 2010. By April, we had worked pretty much around the clock. We were doing commercial cleaning at night, residential cleaning in the day. We'd go out about 8 o'clock and we'd work till about 2. We'd come back, take a shower, usually eat something, take a nap. We'd leave the house about 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock, go out and start doing our commercial accounts. So we were running a split shift until we finally hired an employee. And that's another, hiring employees is going to be another video. But I just want to kind of share with you, guys, I know this, I don't have any fancy backgrounds back here. I live in the Philippines. You might say, well, what's this old guy? He's trying to tell me how to run a cleaning business. You don't have to watch the channel. I mean, I don't know if I would, but I will tell you this. I will always shoot straight with you, and I will help you if I can. If you just go down in the comments, ask me anything. And I built it from the ground up, me and my wife did. But I was the marketer. I was the one that had to learn how to get the taxes done. I had to learn how to get the payroll done. All these things, what kind of insurances we had to get, and set up the proper checking account. I had to watch, the cash flows and things like that. I had to hire the employees. I had to be the HR person. I had to do all the marketing. All these things I've done. So there may be a few questions you might ask me I might not know the answer to, but I guarantee you, I wish I had somebody like me that I could just ask a question of, and they would give me an honest answer. And I remember the guy that inspired me to get into the business. He didn't know it. He didn't tell me. In fact, he discouraged me from getting into business. I think he was afraid that I'd have a bigger business than him. But he was a nice guy, and they cleaned our office there at FedEx. Never will forget, husband and wife. And they were both little short people, but friendly, and they'd come in, they'd work, and I always admired them because they were business owners, and I knew what we paid them. We paid them about $600 a month to clean this small FedEx office, a couple, 2, 3 offices, and they'd get in, they'd get out, and I kept thinking to myself, man, that's exciting. They got $600 a month from us, and they would name all the customers they had throughout the area. And I was like, man, they were making some good money. And one day I said, well, I'm not going to say his name. I said, how many employees do you have? He said, well, we got about 15. I was like, dang, you got 15? I thought this guy was a giant in the cleaning business at that point. I thought this guy's got something on the ball that I don't have, and my point being, I'd never been in the cleaning business before. I'd never run a business before. There's an old saying that goes, a second grader is a god to a first grader, because he knew more than I did about it. I looked up to him thinking, that, he knew everything. And I just wished I could sit down for hours and just pick his brain, and just talk to him and ask all kinds of questions. And he would and I'd say, man, I've thought about getting into cleaning business. Oh man, I don't know. It's pretty rough. I said, look, I'll call him Tom. His name wasn't Tom. Tom, you said it's rough, but it seemed like you're making good money, and would you ever think of just quitting the cleaning business and go back to work where you used to go to work at? Oh no, I'd never do that. I thought, I got you, and so I knew right then I could do as good as that guy. I thought I could, because they were cutting corners and they had a lot of excuses sometimes. They did a pretty good job, and they had a good business. They made a lot of money, and they had to support their kids and all this. But what I'm saying is, they didn't really have any education. I don't have any education either, as far as post-high school. But I knew I could do as good as him, and I kept thinking, if I could just get 10 places that paid me $600 a month, I could make $72,000 a year, and that's more than I'm making now. And I figured I had one account making $600, and I thought, man, I could work like half as much or less and make more money than working at FedEx. And that's exactly what we were able to do. So if you find this interesting or you have a question, go down in the comment section right now. This is a very informal, it's going to be informal from here on out. And I'm not going to super edit the videos. I'm not going to put all flashbangs and, huge intro and make myself look like I'm Tony Robbins or something. I mean, that's for some people to do. I'm just going to give you the facts and my opinion, and I'm not always right, but I'm as honest as I can be. And again, if you need some help, go down in the comment section and ask me a question. And I'll see you next time.